Cheating death has been a goal for humans since the dawn of time. Eating magical fruits, drinking from mystical fountains, searching for holy grails. But what if, after years of searching, the secret to immortality had finally arrived? What if playing video games could make you live forever? I remember playing Mario Kart 64 as a kid. I always played as Donkey Kong. And during my race, the first time I ever saw it, a translucent version of my character went speeding past me. And at first, I'll admit, I was a little confused. Was this a glitch? Was this some Masingo level of Easter egg that only the best of the best gamers were able to find? The truth is, this was my first interaction with what the industry calls a ghost racer. In fact, the first game to implement this was Hard Drive-In by Atari Games in the 1980s. The game was designed so that it would capture your best lap and then replay it as a translucent ghost version of yourself, meant to constantly encourage you to outperform your best performance. And 36 years later, this concept has been expanded upon masterfully by a game that you may have heard of. Forza.
The just announced next installment of one of Xbox's biggest racing series, Forza Horizon 4.
Every E3 there is one game that I'm always elated to cover.
I am excited to show you the world premiere.
Forza Horizon, which I am super stoked about.
The next Forza.
Forza Motorsport 7.
Forza.
The most iconic, the most technically advanced, and the biggest game we've ever built.
You know, I don't think a lot of gamers are willing to admit it, but I do think Forza deserves a whole lot of credit for what they've done here. Essentially, they've taken the idea of ghost racers and they have evolved it into what they are calling Drivatars. You see, the world of Forza is so massive that in order to make it feel like a living world, the developers have created these AI drivers that are built off the captured data of other players. Like right now, we are playing with an AI Drivatar version of my friend, which doesn't require them to be online. It doesn't require them to be actively playing the game. And it doesn't even require them to be alive. And I think it's definitely worth mentioning. This is an imitation. This is not an identity. These systems are not programmed to think. They're not programmed to remember, and they certainly are not programmed to feel. These Drivatars are simply a line of code designed to imitate an average player, and then the game assigns them a username based off of your Xbox friends list. But even with all that being said, since the introduction of Drivatars, there have been countless articles and forum posts, all discussing players who have logged into the game only to see like the Drivatar of a deceased friend or a lost relative playing against them. I mean, it's interesting. They express a feeling of resolve. Video games gave them one last chance to say goodbye. Like, they know that this clearly cannot be their friend, but something about seeing their gamer tag over an AI driver has temporarily tricked them into a place where somehow they are getting closure. And the fact that that is being accomplished through the power of video games, I think is extremely awesome. Now, if you're anything like me, this is where your mind probably is starting to wonder, because if this level of imitation is possible in a racing game, what's stopping it from being used in other games? Well, it might surprise you to hear that games like Call of Duty and Fortnite are already offering casual lobbies filled with AI bots that are programmed to act and behave as actual players. And when programming these bots, developers have to capture a massive amount of data. A player's actions, their movements, their decision-making, their risk assessment. All of that data goes into a giant cooking pot of ones and zeros. And then on the other end, we get an in-game AI bot that is designed to emulate a human player. But using that same concept, it's not that far off to assume that we could isolate that data, and instead of batch producing a generic bot. A developer could use your 600 plus hours of Call of Duty data to create an AI carbon copy of you in that game, potentially leading us to a day where the next time you drop into a game like Call of Duty, you see your squad, but it may not be your friends. Instead of them being online, well, these are just AI carbon copies of their playstyle, performing exactly as they do and showcasing the same skill level as they do. And clearly the next step in evolution for technology like ghost racers and Drivatars. And luckily for us, there are developers out there who are actively pursuing this next step and pushing the boundaries of AI digital cloning. And to see the best example of what that next step could be, we have to check out a game called Mimesis. So at this point, I'm pretty sure there's a section of the audience who's like, what does a horror video game have to do with ghost racers, Drivatars, or immortality? Which is a very warranted question. And if you're not aware of what Mimesis is, it's essentially a horror video game where you and your team are tasked with looting for scrap in order to repair your tram, which progresses you further into the game. However, trying to prevent you from gathering scraps are monsters and these AI enemies called the Mimesis, which are programmed to mimic your voice, your activities, and even your movements. And the way that I see this is that essentially the developers have expanded upon the idea of ghost racers and Drivatars by programming a game that creates a digital clone of you and your friends that you encounter with in real time. Instead of taking a bunch of players' data, this game captures your data, your likeness, your movement patterns, your inventory, even the sound of your voice to create a deceptive carbon copy of you in the game. And there are a lot of factors that make this work. You know, the intensity of the game, the directional sound design, the isolation you feel while playing, the maze-like hallways. But the end result is Mimesis cloning user data, which makes it very challenging to determine who is the real player and who is the mimic. A modern day Turing test where the developers are not trying to prove intelligence, but blur the line between real player and imitation. Which then takes us down a completely different rabbit hole, but if gamers were feeling resolved due to seeing a gamer tag in Forza, how do you think they're going to feel in the future when they come across a game that mimics a lost loved one? Not only would that mimicking software be able to act the way that that person would, but it would be able to sound the way they do as well. Now, is a deceptive carbon copy of you and your friends inside of a video game immortality? Not at all. However, I would venture to say that we are at least headed in the right direction. Recently, I read Ernest Cline's Ready Player 2. And in the book, Gregarious Games introduces a brand new Oasis neural interface, the Oni headset. The big selling factor on this headset is that it allows users to experience the Oasis using all 5 senses. But while in use, the Oni headset also captures the user's brain activity, including things like your memories, your thoughts, your feelings. And with that data, other users can relive major life moments of other players, and while doing so, they can feel, hear, see, and sense exactly how the original user felt during those moments. And while we live in what seems like a very futuristic world, one filled with concepts like Neuralink, the idea of a full digital mind upload into a metaverse still feels very far off. But then, we do have to pause and admit that fiction has always been the rehearsal for new ideas before they become a reality. Now, spoiler alert, later on in the book, they begin to explore the idea of using that saved data to create AI copies of deceased players. These are called DPCs, not to be confused with what we know today as an NPC. Because in the book, these digitalized player characters are essentially AI copies of a player. But instead of using the gameplay data like we do today, the DPCs are programmed off of the user's consciousness that was captured by using the Oni headset. resulting in DPCs that would act and behave exactly as that player would in real life. These DPCs would feature the same memories, the same personality as that original player, serving as a frozen state of that player's consciousness that is living on for eternity inside of the Oasis. And when you have ideas like the ones from Ready Player 2, admittedly, it does change how I look at things like ghost racers, Drivatars, in-game bots, or even AI mimicking software. This is by no means the finish line, but perhaps it's just the first steps. And that's where the theory of the laws of accelerating returns come into play. You see, that concept is that technology is always changing. It's always constantly improving. Similar to the first iPhone. Yeah, it was clunky. It's innovative, but flawed. And here we are 17 years later, and the iPhone is some of the best technology we have on the market today. And I guess my question is that if I died today, could a developer take my gameplay data, my likeness from this YouTube channel, my voice from one of the many podcast episodes that I've been a part of, or my activity from social media, and upload that into a video game, granting me eternal life as an NPC? An upload where my children or grandchildren could log in and go on adventures, fight off dragons, and explore new worlds with me, even if I were no longer alive. Today, it feels like you could pull off a very crude version of what we are talking about, but think about 17 years from now. What new technology will be available? What advancements will we have made? I mean, is it that hard to believe that in the future, a digital upload of your consciousness, just like the one in Ready Player 2, could be possible? Because if today, games are able to mimic our playstyles and even mimic our voices just from a couple of minutes of gameplay, then based off the laws of accelerating returns alone, you and I are aboard a train that is quickly approaching a future where digital immortality could be a reality. And then I suppose the question begins to dive into a more spiritual one. But if we die physically, but our consciousness carries on digitally, can we classify that as immortality? And before you answer that, think about that for a moment. Is that not the same concept that modern religions have preached about our souls? If you follow these rules and accept insert God here into your life, your soul will be granted immortality in the spiritual realm. And this is where we're about to go really deep, so buckle up. Let's say you preemptively upload your consciousness before you die, and you go on to live for 2 more years. Does that digital upload from 2 years ago still reflect who you are? If your digital consciousness goes on, making new memories in the digital world, technically, those digital memories are foreign to your physical self. So is your digital upload still a true reflection of you, or has it become something completely new? Because in that scenario, following the digital upload, your physical consciousness and your digital consciousness would resemble 2 ships. And even though these 2 ships looked exactly the same, and they are leaving the port at the exact same time, their journeys would be enough to alter who they are. If one ship encounters storms that batter the ship and rocks the crew, while the other is granted calmer waters, those 2 identical ships that left at the exact same time would be 2 completely different ships, simply based upon their journey. So is it immortality, or is it something completely new? That is a brave new world. One that I don't even know if I am truly ready to embrace. Because in that world, death would not be the end of the journey. Death would simply be the next level of our lives. And while video games today definitely do not hold the key to immortality, perhaps one day they will. So the next time you're playing a video game and you come across an in-game bot or you see a Drivatar, ask yourself, if this is the first draft of Digital Immortality, are you comfortable with how you're being written?